Welcome to the About Small Business podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to be speaking to Dave Head from Northern Design and Digital Marketing. Dave, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Now, we met very briefly the other day at a networking event, and what struck me is the enthusiasm and energy that comes from someone much younger than me. You did interest me, and you clearly are, obviously, I think to anyone watching, you can see you're a lot younger, which I think fascinates me because I think most people that I've spoken to sort of throughout the podcast have been maybe had sort of a reasonable length career, shall we say, and then decided after a time in a period of work, they've decided they're going to start on their own. Is it a cheeky question to ask you how old you are?
I'm 33-year-old.
You're 33-year-old?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Okay, right. In which case, you're not as young as I thought you were. You're looking very good for your age. So it must have been an easy paper round. And I think in fairness, you did say that you've been working in the industry for a while.
Yeah, I think about 15 years now. I've been a few different countries and worked around a few different industries, and then eventually moved back to the UK and set up my own.
Right.
That's where I am now.
That's brilliant. So, I mean, going back to your school days, what were you like at school?
Oh, I was never not in trouble, let's put it that way. I was always at the head teacher's office. I was on governor's reports. I was on head teacher's reports. I couldn't sit still.
Well, right, okay,
And I
so
always wanted to do what I wanted to do. And I always found it difficult being told to do things in a way that I thought were wrong. And basically, I always felt like I was limiting myself because I couldn't do the things that I knew were right. I knew if I went and done it this way, it would be quicker and more efficient, and I wouldn't be wasting my time. And that's what I found difficult about school, was that I wanted to just colour in, and all day long I just wanted to colour in and just design. And that's why I've set up my own design agency, because I'm great at colouring in, and I just I love what I do, and I love helping brands. But
just on the school thing, so fundamentally then, would it be reasonable to assume that your opinion school got it wrong?
yes, absolutely.
Do you think that's a recurring problem? Do you think it's a problem that we need to address with the education system?
Not just in primary school, secondary school, but in university as well. I felt like when I was at university, I was learning out-of-date techniques.
I was going to say, did you go to, because from what you're saying about school, it sounds as though you maybe decided to go straight into work.
I scraped my GCSEs, scraped through, but I then went and did a music degree, a music foundation degree.
Right.
Went to go to university and was thinking, right, I love art, I love design, but I love music. I want to do a joint degree in the two. And I wanted to basically combine those two passions of mine to set up my life as working in the music industry, but in the design side.
Right.
Because they go hand in hand, I believe. But what happened is my university actually cancelled my course last minute. So I chose my university, booked my where I was going to be staying, got the halls of residence sorted, and now I have to choose between art and music. Which one do I go down? Which route? And because it was a BSc that I was doing, I had to choose the programming side of design. And I started doing a Bachelor of Science in web programming and web design.
Right.
And it was all about the engineering side and learning software engineering side and learning coding techniques. And again, going back to why I believe uni got it wrong, is because I was learning techniques that weren't relevant for the industry, learning programming languages that weren't relevant for front-end development, and the languages I was learning were very out of date. I understand there is some practical aspect to it, like learning the foundations of programming and learning object-oriented programming, but for me, who was doing a web design degree, the design side was severely lacking.
Right, okay. So, I mean, you say you did a BSc as opposed to BS, so Bachelor of Science rather than Bachelor of the Arts. So
yes, that's right. Fundamentally
a different approach to those topics.
Absolutely.
I mean, was that your choice to go on to that?
If I knew what I was applying for in the original to start with, I would have went BA.
Right.
Because it would have been more suited to my creative side.
Yeah.
What I do like about, and what actually did go really well for me at university, was my actual dissertation allowed me to do what I wanted to do and do it in a way that was a bit more of the cocky side.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do was prove that I was a better designer than the BBC. And using eye tracking and the Bachelor of Science scientific method, I actually proved that I was, based on where the eye fixations were around on the screen and where people would interact with. based on my design rather than the BBC's.
Right, that's quite interesting. It's also I do worry that we're maybe going slightly overly technical
Yeah.
for a broader audience. So can you just kind of break that? I mean, essentially, it sounds like you don't particularly like being told what to do. Is that
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
So we're not very long into the interview. You don't like being told what to do, and I think, to be fair, you've got that sort of energy. You've got a clear vision of what you want to do. So basically, university's getting it wrong. The schools are getting it wrong. What do you think they should have been doing to help someone like you? Because I do remember early in my university career, I remember going to work at a factory, and I remember people saying about the factory owner that he'd been told you're either going to end up a millionaire or in jail. Now, when I was younger, that was the kind of thing that was said about a lot of people.
Yeah, I actually had something very similar.
Well, I was just going to ask you, man. I don't want to
Yeah.
sort of malign your character
Yeah.
by suggesting that you could possibly end up in jail, but it does seem, and again, just through doing this podcast, there seem to be a lot of people that I speak to that really didn't like school. Now, I mean, for me, I don't think I was that bad. I know I could certainly be accused of being quite arrogant, sort of talking a bit too much, being a bit of a smart ass, for want of a better expression. People that know me now won't find that a surprise. But I did enjoy school,
Yeah.
and I feel guidance could have been better.
Yep, that's exactly how I feel. And I never got told I'd be in jail, but I got told I need to focus more, otherwise I'll just be on the dole. That was through teachers at my school. It was you're just a waste because you don't focus or apply yourself. And a lot of the times, it was wasted potential was a lot of words I got. But it was more if I'm not interested, I find it very difficult to focus myself onto that task or into that thing. And I'm going through ADHD processes to find out whether I've got it or not.
Is that now?
Yes,
or
it
at
is,
school?
yeah.
Right.
There's been lots of times that I should have done it when I was younger.
Yeah.
But it's more, the signs are there.
That's an alarmingly common
yeah.
thing that I'm hearing again. As I was chatting to someone again on one of the podcasts, the percentage of neurodivergent people within the self-employed.
It's because we need to know. We need
Yeah.
to do things in our way, because if we don't, we find it really difficult to stick to other people's boundaries or work within other people's limitations.
That is interesting, yeah, and it makes sense. But it's increasingly common now, though.
Absolutely, and I'm seeing it more not because we're starting to recognise it, we're starting to understand it, but we're starting to figure out ways to work around it and do things in a way that suits us more. And that's what I like about some of the things I've been finding on the internet and tools to deal with it, and just running with my own flow in a way.
Yeah.
Just diving straight into it, dealing with these fixations and becoming obsessive. The amount of random things and random bits of knowledge that I've got purely because I've been working on a project that's based on this and I've become obsessed with it. I've worked in so many different industries. Like, I've worked in whistleblowing, I've worked in genetically modified mosquitoes, and I've also
That's pretty diverse.
from that all the way to, I mean, my first project going full-time freelance was for swingers. So it's
Right.
I've worked in many different industries, from B2B, B2C, and some of the more unique offerings out there. I've learned so much, and at the amount of niche knowledge that I get, and I find that the most fascinating, because I can learn about random topics and keep that knowledge in, and it keeps me fresh.
It is interesting because everything that you're describing there, because one thing I was, I suppose, kind of concerned about to a degree with the education system is that it is quite a diverse range of subjects, and I think there is an argument to say that that's as it should be. We need a grounding in a number of basic things, but as a society, we're growing increasingly more specialised. So it's like sort of the person that can do, I suppose, what you can do, because like you do advertise on your website, you've got a variety of services there, but we're looking at sort of, or certainly people. Just a Google search, simple Google search. If I want to book a photographer, for example, I'm going to type photographer, and then people that focus on that keyword are going to come up first. And the school system almost doesn't want us to specialise too early, and it almost doesn't encourage that at all. But it's interesting what you've just been saying about your working with different
Yeah. So what I would say on that,
industries.
it's more better to work within a niche or within an industry, but don't narrow yourself down to that one niche. So, for example, the creative world, I love all type of the creative world, from the
Mm.
photography to the videography to the music to the art to all of it. But I couldn't narrow myself down to just being a designer.
Yeah.
I need to get my head into the photography side, because you can understand how the photography can then get you more leads on the design. Because if you've got a great design and terrible photography, they're not going to work together.
Yeah.
And vice versa. You need to be able to show it all off. And I think a great example of this is actually my dad. My dad's a bit of a jack of all trades, but in the property development world.
Right.
And he found that waiting for a plasterer to come in and do something, and they'd plaster over some of the electric switches, for example, or they just do it. They wouldn't know that the wires need to be in a certain way.
Yeah.
For when he's plastering it all. But my dad just ended up learning it and became this jack of all trades. But I hate that phrase, because nobody ever uses the full one.
Yeah.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
But that's always in your mind, isn't it? Whenever
Yeah.
that phrase is used, I'm the same myself. And interestingly, I do recall several frustrations. And well, my plasterer story, I'd asked a plasterer to skim a room, and I came back and like sort of they just left the radiator behind the radiator and like not even sort of blended anything in. It's like, well, I'm not a plumber.
Yeah.
And I think within reason, and I'm sure you must come up with that, and we've already spoken about maybe getting a bit too technical. It's like, if you don't know what the job entails, there's a degree of responsibility on you as a professional to like offer some guidance to your customer, like saying, what do you want to do about that radiator? I can't take it off.
Well, in the marketing world, what are you going to do about tracking the success of this?
Yeah.
I can give you the best photography in the world or the best design in the world, but it means nothing if you can't prove that it's been successful.
Yeah.
Are you tracking your conversions beforehand? Are you tracking how many leads you're getting from it? No. Well, why are you getting me to design something for you? It might work. It will probably work, because I know what I'm talking about, with being a little bit arrogant there, but it also, you've got no proof. And that's what I love about design, is you can prove that design works as well.
Yeah.
In certain industries that I've worked in, I've got some great data, especially like hospitality world. Just changing a little bit of the booking system can get you $4,500 extra a week, or just by getting more bookings in, just minor things.
If you're enjoying this content, please do like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to let you know exactly when another podcast's going to drop. So going back to university, because I'm quite fascinated as to why you made that decision to go to university at all.
It was just what you were meant to do. That was it. I didn't really know otherwise. In all honesty, looking back.
Were you at a school, sixth form, college, or?
And I went to Newcastle College.
Right.
I actually did my A levels. Didn't really do well. I actually did physics, fine art, and graphic design. Bit of a random choice. And then I wanted to go back and then I dropped out of physics and fine art, because fine art wasn't really fine art. It was basically a history A level.
Yeah.
And then went and did music, and then actually kept my graphic design A level on the top, because that was just amazing. I learned a lot that way.
I have to ask what your instrument is.
Oh, drums.
You're a drummer.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've got that energy. I need to jump around and
enjoy hitting things.
Exactly. It takes out the frustration sometimes. Yeah.
Again, it is interesting, like how because did you do music A level?
I did the BTEC. So I did BTEC in music performance and production.
Right, that's interesting. Because I did music A level, and I was quite surprised. And I think in many respects, what you might have found with it, had you gone with that option, you are doing a lot of history, the sort of mathematics of harmony, and like sort of you've got this. I mean, I started it. Obviously, my main instrument's guitar, and I think I was among the first within the country. Again, I'm a lot older than you, that did electric guitar for A level. Mm-hmm. They didn't really understand it, but essentially like a number of self-taught people were then being confronted with these dots and on a paper, and then having to construct 4-part harmonies. But it was actually quite mathematical, so you could kind of see how it works. And there is, I suppose, there is that crossover and application of the different skills, and that sounds to be what you were kind of finding with your
Yeah,
breadth
absolutely.
of education.
Yeah, and going back to the structure of that, I learned how to read drum music and then sheet music for drums, and realized it doesn't really transfer to. I can read the rhythm, but I can't read the notes.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because reading the rhythm, I've not got a bad sense of rhythm, but reading the rhythm was what I kind of struggled with
Yeah,
when I was looking at
total
a
opposite
typical.
for me.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you where a C is on the notes. I can tell you what is a bass drum and what's a hi hat, but you know,
Both skills, I'm sure everyone will agree, are handy in everyday life.
I've never used it since.
No, I mean, either come to that.
Just goes
But
back to tabs, doesn't it?
yes, that's it. Not even that. I think majority of guitarists, I think they just play by ear or
Yeah,
just wing it.
absolutely.
And I don't think it's too controversial to say that drummers don't
I've,
even do that.
drummers, honestly, it's very rare that I even know drummers can read sheet music. Most of
Yeah,
them, like you say, play by ear, and some of the drummers I know, especially around the northeast, most of them weren't even ever taught drums. They
yeah,
just got into it because they loved the instrument.
yeah. That's
And
it.
that's the same for me.
Do you ever regret that you didn't stick with the
Mm,
music?
Yes and no. I enjoy it as a hobby, and I absolutely love it as a hobby. But I think if I had to take music as a full-time career, I think I would find it frustrating
Mm,
because of how limiting or how difficult it can be to actually get into that industry,
yeah,
and the amount of battles you've got to face on a regular basis, and the limits you've got to put yourself on, or
mm.
the people you've got to please. I think I would find that quite difficult.
Do you not think that's the same for every industry?
Yes, but I think in other industries like the creatives, it's a bit easier to get around that because you can show off a bit easier with creative work. You can show the portfolio. Where
Yeah,
getting people to listen to you can quickly visually show something.
yeah.
Where getting people to listen to your work or hear it is harder to get in front of people.
That's an interesting point, actually. Yeah, you're right. Because like to listen to you actually requires someone's attention,
Yeah,
whereas you can grab someone's attention with a
with
good visual,
visuals.
can't you?
And I think that's where they go hand in hand. And
Yeah.
music can do that. The same. I mean, one of the companies I worked for, they had a dedicated sonic identity for their brand.
Right.
They had custom chosen music for different times of the day, so that when you walked into this hotel, it would be on a morning, it'd be more relaxing. They had chill vibes, chill step music and lo-fi. On the afternoon, it was starting to get a bit more like Ed Sheeran-y, like acoustic guitar, and on a night, it was like house music.
Yeah.
But it would be subtle that nobody would really hear it, but the vibe in the hotel would change. I mean, the hotel's brand was so unique for each aspect of it.
Yeah.
They even had an olfactive identity, so you walked in, you were hit with a smell, so you knew exactly. All right, I'm in this hotel. I can smell it, and it was
That is quite bizarre. I mean, for most small businesses, we're not at that level of
yeah.
thinking. But obviously, given
It
your
makes a
your
difference.
background, yeah,
The
it's
different things, different can peak different emotions, and if you can peak different senses, you can have different. You can force that emotion on somebody, in a way like. I mean, if you've ever opened an Apple product, you know it has that smell as soon as you open up.
yeah.
And they do the same thing. They have an olfactive identity. They have a feel, and that's why Apple do it really well.
Is that something that a small business could take advantage of, in your opinion?
They could do that, yeah. I mean, even if you just have a certain aftershave or perfume that you like to put in things,
Yeah.
that could do that on a simple aspect because it will stay there long enough that as long as you've got a good quality like perfume or that would
Yeah.
work. And the same for like the sonic identity as well. If you want to, for example, bars, if you could change that in there, or hospitality,
Yeah.
demand where you are. Restaurants would be a great one. Not bars, probably not, but restaurants,
Yeah.
depending on the time of day, the breakfast, the lunch, and the dinner offering could be associated with different music, so you have different atmospheres.
Right. And you're peaking different emotions, which are
Exactly.
possibly going to be more inclined to
Yeah,
spend the money.
music can do that.
Yeah.
But it's the same with art. Art can do that. Design can do that. If you look into it, there's ways to, probably the wrong word, but manipulate people to do things. Color can manipulate people. Music can manipulate people, or manipulate's definitely the wrong word.
It's interesting when you say that, because I mean, like I say, for me, as like I say, language is kind of what I work with.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that when you say manipulate, because I think certainly as regards to
Vocal
data,
motion is probably a better.
I think for what you're saying, yeah, but sort of manipulation of data is a big thing at the minute,
Yeah.
and it kind of goes hand in hand with what you're talking about, doesn't it? It's like sort of looking at sort of inspiring those certain emotions to manipulate behaviours.
Yeah.
Although perhaps does sound a little bit more. I mean, maybe it is more sinister. I don't know.
Well,
But
I mean, if you look at the football world, I'm not a football fan at all.
no,
My dad tried to get me into it, didn't really work for some reason. uh, but certain like changing rooms are painted in like really dull pinks or really like depressing blues, and it actually evokes the emotion that they're not willing to play and actually causes them to play worse in the opposition's changing rooms. And you can actually, that's what football people or like Premier League people actually
yeah,
do to manipulate their opposition to lose. They in their opposition's changing rooms to make them feel like they're not good enough to play, because it does.
that is quite fascinating actually.
It's
And
quite
because
dull pink.
I can. But the thing is, I can kind of see how that works.
Yeah, and it going the opposite way, painting things like red and black. I mean that's kind of going back to the brand sometimes. And obviously I'm Sunderland, which is red and black.
Or
But
Dennis the Menace.
yeah, exactly. But it does the red promotes passion, and
Yeah.
it promotes the anger and the fire to get you like up and running, get you ready to play. And color does have that emotion on people, can cause that change in feel, change how they're ready to play.
That is really interesting because, like, sort of, in a way, I'm sort of shocked, but I'm shocked because it's like, why has that not occurred to me before? Because I can completely see how that works, and I just wonder if anyone's seen this
Bring
that's
it
maybe
back to
running
your
a
world.
local football club or cricket club. So they're going to be out with a pink paint on the
Yeah.
opposition changing
Bringing it
rooms.
back to your world and the word side of it, I'm not very good at writing. That's one of the parts of going back to school that I was never very good at, the literature
Right.
side or the English side. But I've worked with some amazing copywriters who can bring out that emotion in just a few words, can
Yeah,
get that point across and say, like, you look at Duolingo, their social media, they're doing it really well. I mean, even Aldi, when they're taking the mick out of Tesco all the time,
yeah.
or they're doing it really well. And I think copy and being able to write is such a fantastic skill. It's just not a skill that I've got, and it's one I found quite difficult to
Yeah.
get across. It, like going back to school, the whole like English was not my cup of tea.
Which I think that's really fair enough, and it is interesting. Like I said, when we look at the education system, I do think there are a number of teachers out there that are guilty of not appreciating that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some kids, I mean, I worked at a school that was, at the time I was there, was quite a tough school, and I remember been in this. It was a lower set year 9 class. It's in my first year, their behaviour wasn't great. My classroom control wasn't what became. But I did eventually, I got on with the class eventually, and like, still probably in touch with one or two of them. But I do remember one lad there getting quite upset that he couldn't understand a passage of Shakespeare.
Yeah,
And this lad felt that made him thick.
yeah,
And I knew this same kid could strip a car engine down and put it back together, which is something that in my senior years I still haven't got the first clue how to approach.
yeah. It's different parts of the brain.
Yeah,
How you work.
that's it. And it's but I think what's fascinating is that for all any self doubts, any self criticism, imposter syndrome that I have,
Yeah,
never ever includes me thinking I'm thick in any way.
if the same, it doesn't
Whereas,
for me either. It doesn't. I don't see that I'm thick. I feel like I don't. When I do get imposter syndrome, which I have been, because I'm quite new to the world.
I think everyone does. I mean,
Yeah.
that doesn't go away.
For me, it's more, am I actually good enough?
Yeah.
Sometimes sometimes I'm too arrogant for my own good, and a lot of people will agree with that. Whoever's actually watching this, who know me.
Well, I mean, just out of that, where would you draw the line between arrogance and confidence? Because I mean, to do what you're doing,
Yeah.
you have to be confident.
Yeah. I'd probably say I'm not arrogant. I'd say I'm a bit cocky and I take it a bit too far. But when I know I'm right, even if I might not be, if I'm so adamant I'm right, I will push for that
Yeah.
to be right. A past employer of mine slowed me down a lot. I worked with industry tools that weren't good enough. For example, I learned how to use Adobe years ago, and I've been using Adobe software and Photoshop for years, and working in a job where I had to use Canva, which, don't get me wrong, Canva's great for
Yeah.
people who aren't designers. and it gets the job done at a high enough standard that you can get something out quickly.
Yes.
However, when you need to produce mass amounts of work in various formats, why am I using a tool that's slower for someone who can do it quicker in other software?
Yeah.
I just feel like I was running with my legs tied together, essentially. And
It's
that's
interesting.
exactly it.
I've never got on with Canva.
Yeah.
I mean, I did use Adobe, and then they went subscription. I was one of these that dug the heels. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. And then
Yeah.
I started using I don't know if you know the Affinity suite.
Yeah,
of
Affinity is
iSerif.
great. I mean, I've never had a good enough chance to play with it, but I moved to Figma.
Right.
And with Figma, it's just, I think it works better for my brain because it's just this giant artboard and
Yeah.
I can see everything. And I'm like, oh, I can just pick that bit and put that into the design. Everything's there all
Yeah.
at once. And I can just use whatever's there. And it makes it my process quicker and just, I just love Figma. It's one of the best software.
I think to be fair though, I mean, going back to what you were saying about you felt that Adobe was better for you. It is just about finding the right.
Oh, yeah. It's what's right for you.
Yeah, whatever works for you.
Yeah.
And I think, well, dare I say it, there are now obviously budgetary constraints on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've sort of joked about, laughed about the Adobe subscription model, but in some ways,
It is a limitation for people.
yeah, and I suppose some design studios would say it's kicked out the wannabes and pretenders
Yeah.
because
In that way, yes, 100%, it's kicked out a lot of people, but then they've moved to others, and those other tools have grown dramatically.
Yeah.
Like when Sketch became a really good tool for people to start using, and Figma kicked Sketch pretty much out of the way.
yeah,
And it just works because it's all web-based. It's not limited, so Sketch was limited to Macs.
yeah,
So that limited so many people who couldn't afford a Mac to get into the design world.
yeah, that's true.
And then Figma came about. It was purely web based. Anybody could log in. Anybody could use it, and it just grew so quickly. And what you can do in it just made life easier for every designer, I would say, and it just sped up so many people's processes.
Yeah.
And that's why I loved it.
Going back to just sort of because we started that section of the discussion with your former employer.
Yeah.
What was your as soon as you left university? Because university, I mean, sound like a fairly frustrating time for you. Were you really looking forward to getting into the world of work?
Absolutely. I actually started applying for jobs when I was still in university. It was my final year, and I was ready to drop out. It was. Do
you think you would have done, or
I would have dropped out if I got offered a job straight away.
right?
What was quite lucky is I applied for nearly 200 jobs. I got offered two. I got offered one in London and one in Amsterdam. And obviously I took the one in Amsterdam. They told me I don't need to start till September. And I was like, great, I'll just finish my degree. I think I got the job because I was the only person who got on a boat to go for my interview.
Right.
I had a 36-hour boat ride to go to my job interview. And it was great. They gave me a little metro pass. They got me around Amsterdam. They looked after me when I was there, and they looked after me while I was at my job. And
I suppose, I mean, in fairness, I mean that does show some commitment, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, having said that, I mean, I think there's quite a few people that would love to go for just go for the interview, maybe not actually get to the interview and enjoy a bit of time in Amsterdam. But I mean, no, I mean, what an incredible opportunity.
I was there. I moved to Holland for 2 years. Bought a house over there, and it was a just fantastic experience.
Wow.
I had a tiny little old war servants' quarter of a house. It was a 1 bedroom. I think it was 30 square meters, the entire flat, but it was in Amsterdam Zuid, and it was just one of the nicest, most relaxed parts of the city. I was in cycling distance of everywhere, and I just loved it. And it was right next to the train station, and I used to work in Voorschoten. Getting the train there every day was an hour and a half, but it was worth it to live in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was fantastic.
So, and sorry, where was the job?
It was for Citizen M Hotels.
Right.
And their head office was in Voorschoten, but they had hotels around the world, and so many of them. I got to work on the design side for many of the different hotels, creating the signage, coming up with the concepts, even just gifts for employees. That was quite nice to work for, and they taught me so much about marketing.
I can hear in your voice you're talking about them with a lot of affection. You clearly enjoyed that.
I learnt so much from the director. I learnt so much from my team, and it was all quite a new world for them because they started in the fashion world and then became a fashion style or fashion brand hotel, and they just took over the world pretty much. So many other brands started copying them, and what they're doing is great. And I'd love to be a part of it. It was amazing to be a part of. Yeah.
So how did that come to an end for you?
I moved home for love.
Right.
I moved home and it didn't really work out.
I was going to say, I really hope this is because, like,
No,
just it's interesting listening to you describe that
Yeah.
job in Amsterdam. It's like the look on your face. It's like you're talking about the one that got away, and then
the job definitely was the one that got away. No, and honestly, I love the place. I love the job. It did feel like a breakup when I moved home, actually, and I was on the boat back with all my stuff in a van. It did feel like a bit like a breakup.
Wow.
However, it did show me that I wasn't actually that good of a designer. When I moved back home, I
Really?
got jobs here. I was pretty much running the graphic design side. I mean, we outsourced to a much bigger agency to do the main work because I was
Right.
still such a new designer. I got a job back home for another creative agency up here as to move back, and I basically got shown that I was too cocky for my own good. To be brutal, I got my ass handed to me about how bad of a designer I really was, and I really had to step up my game.
How did that come about?
I seen the quality of the other designers' work. I didn't get to keep my job. It's because I wasn't good enough. Like, I
Right.
really wasn't a good enough designer. And then I really had to figure out what to do and figure out how to get back into this. Like, I need to pretty much teach myself how to design again, because I'd learned how to design for one brand in a print world, and I didn't know how to design for other people anymore. And I'd lost that skill when I was working for one brand and working for an agency where you do lots
Yeah.
of different things. I found that really difficult. And
That is quite interesting. But it does make sense again.
yeah, and see, I lost that job, and then it was struggling to find jobs again. And I was quite lucky again. I rang up IMVIP and became a photographer for IMVIP, and those guys really looked after me and kept me afloat to pay the mortgage
Yeah.
when I was working weekends for them and selling key rings, and that's how I got into the photography world. I rang them up and said, "Can I have a job? And you're a photographer." Never touched a camera in my life. Went, yeah, I am. Nicked my dad's camera, got into the photography world, and if it wasn't for IMVIP, I wouldn't have a house. I wouldn't have, and they looked after me so much as well, just to
Right.
get me back some pocket money, essentially, enough to pay the mortgage.
Really interesting. So you've been flying high in as a designer, and then came back here, and then is you've kind of explained that it was the constraints of the design that you'd learned,
Yeah,
and then to work for an actual design agency.
yeah.
It does seem a little bit unfair, I suppose, that they didn't train you up and develop your
I
skills.
think they expected me to come in running, and I
Right.
came in barely walking. And honestly, like, when I was working for one brand for the hotels,
You don't seem very bitter about it.
no, I was at first, and realized that no, it was better for them. It was better for me, in honesty, because I learnt a lot,
Yeah.
and I learnt where I went wrong, and I had to go and get
How
my
old
skills
were
right.
you? How old were you at that point?
At the time, I was 25. No, 26, 27. I moved home from Holland when I was 26, 27-ish.
Right.
And I had that job for 3 months.
Hmm.
Basically, the second I got home from Amsterdam, I was still kind of in this like heartbreak world of I've just moved home from a place I loved.
Yeah.
I wasn't really feeling it. I was trying to sell my house over there, so I was probably not focused on the job I should have been.
Right.
And the quality of my work just wasn't good enough, really. That's all
Yeah.
it was. I know it wasn't. Looking back at the work, I'd be embarrassed to even say it was mine.
It's really impressive that you took the lesson from that though, rather than
Yeah, and weirdly enough,
the easy option, I suppose.
a few months later, I actually got a job for one of the competitors, and they kind of trained me up a little bit, and I learned so much from that agency, where they had a bit more time for me,
Yeah.
which was amazing to learn. And still, one of my favorite quotes from working there was, "If you can't dazzle them with diamonds, baffle them with bullshit." Basically, so if you can't show how good your design is, you've got to at least back it up with some type of rationale to why you've done it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those phrases that will always stick to us, other than you're colouring in all day long. because I do love to colour in.
Yeah, no, I think you mentioned that on our course actually.
Yeah.
That's what you did for a living, colouring. Which is interesting because I do. One of my good friends from college has described himself. You know, he's got his own fairly established design practice down in Herefordshire, and he basically says that himself. But I suppose it's knowing what colours to colour
It's a
with.
stereotype that we've got.
Yeah.
It's the same with photographers who just click, who press a button. They don't just press a button
No.
at all. You've got to get everything, composition, design, like layout, everything. But with design, you've got to get colours, layout, margin space, symmetry, asymmetry. You've got to get it all in a certain way. But essentially, we are just playing with colours all day. I mean, I'm trying to find a supplier now for I want to change my business cards to a pack of crayons. So when I'm handing out business cards to people, it's just just colouring all day.
I love that.
Because I think it is essentially what I do. And actually, while I was at Citizen M Hotel, one of the things we got made were custom branded chalk boxes. And
Right.
we got people to draw on the chalkboards, and that was really fun to do.
It's interesting because I mean, I think the thing is with business cards, and you know, having been to a couple of networking meetings recently, the business cards do at best tend to get filed. Once you've kind of connected on LinkedIn, you don't really need the business card anymore. But a pack of crayons, that's, well, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of people that you're speaking to, they're going to have kids.
Yeah.
And then those kids are then going, all right, great stuff. And then, but then your business contact details, they're around for so much longer. So it really does make a lot, and in a relevant field, if they're colouring in, it's you
get the felt tips next time.
yeah, it sounds like a really good idea, and again that you know, it makes absolute sense. But you've not thought. So is this kind of your business? You're coming up with stuff that makes so much sense that people just hadn't thought of.
In a way, yes, because when I've been working in some of these other industries, and some people are great at the ideas, and I'm not always the best at the ideas, but I love I used to work with a guy who wasn't a creative per se, but he was the most creative person I've ever met in terms of his ideas. Some of the things that he would come out of his mouth, I'm like, oh, we've got to run with that. We've got to do this. We've got to just actually get that done, because that's amazing. And going back to being limited, sometimes we would both be limited by our director to say, no, we can't do that. But his ideas were just, he just could come up with anything. And they were so creative, so much fun, and slightly on the riskiest kind of side, but not enough that it would cause problems for people. I think I just would have loved to have ran with the 10% of his ideas. They were great. Yeah, I'd love to have done that. But idea wise, I think I'm better at just working with somebody, bouncing off ideas together, and then saying, right, that could work because we can actually track that, we can run it, we can then implement that and start designing with that. I think I'm better at running with somebody else's and showing them how to establish it all.
I suppose in that respect, you're not as emotional, are you? Because I mean, something that's just come up in a number of discussions I've had recently, it's like sort of when you've got when you've started your own business, you're emotionally attached. It's I mean, when you've got a limited company, it is it's a separate financial entity that you kind of, you do fall in love with it. You put a lot of time and effort into it.
It becomes your baby.
Yeah, it does. And you don't always make the best decisions in that respect. And I'm just fascinated because, like, sort of just as I said, there's been a couple of moments just talking to you in this relatively short period of time where you've sort of like hit me, wow, that makes a lot of sense. I'd not thought of that. And I suppose in many respects, it does show about the benefits of coming to speak to someone like yourself or someone else when you're reviewing about the direction of your own company and what best to do about it. So, I mean, from your perspective, then you had you sound like you've had quite a varied career. You've learned a lot. You've worked in different areas of industry. At what point? How old were you when you thought, right, that's it? I'm going on my own.
It was only a few months ago, and to be honest, it was just disagreements within the business about my job roles and the way things were working. I was enjoying my role, but things didn't work out, and it was the time: do I go back into employment and just make the same loop of getting frustrated, not being able to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Or do I go out and find my own clients? I've been freelancing for years, like over the past, even when I wasn't good enough to freelance, I was freelancing. And I've worked with some great brands and even small brands just as a freelancer and as not a free, like working within agencies as well. And recently I was always scared to take the plunge because clients have always came to me. I've never been a great salesperson. It's going out and doing the network, and I always found a bit nerve-wracking. I mean,
That is really interesting with you saying that, because it's not how you come across.
yeah, it was all quite new. I knew what to do. I knew how to do it. I knew I've got to be a bit rude and just walk up to people and say, right, I'm just going to interrupt your conversation here. I'm Dave. Let's, what are you guys doing? Learn about their business. And I find it quite difficult to listen to other people's businesses sometimes. My mind just wanders a little bit.
It's hard at some of these events, and I must admit I do, because you walk into a room, a lot of people you don't know.
Yeah.
And for me, it's one of these things. It's like, so there's certain industries, like sort of which are quite big industries in the northeast, and you sit down and someone's got a little niche to do with one of these industries, and your heart sinks. It's like, oh God, it's just not for me at all. And like I say, for me as well, I do, having been selling to the education sector, selling to schools. That in itself is quite niche, and a lot of the stuff that would apply with the business world, it just doesn't. For education, and so you've got those constraints there. But I do know what you mean. But it is interesting that you say that, because you come across as dynamic and as though you as though you are going to be a very good salesman.
Yeah, I just never learnt the actual techniques. I'm great at talking about what I do, and because I am quite passionate about what I do.
Yeah,
I'm not good at the actual sales side of it. The getting people to move in to work with me and say, like, are you ready to take that plunge? Are you ready to, right, this is how much it's going to cost? And the actual admin and financial side of it is getting people across and getting the contract signed.
Yeah.
That's the bit I really struggle with. And even the networking side, if you try doing it, I got quite used to just walking up and being a bit rude to people. Not rude, because it's in the networking world, everybody does it.
Yeah.
But then I did something similar at a wedding recently, and it doesn't really work on a person. It's like, oh, I'm just going to come and interrupt you guys and say hello. And the looks I got from people I didn't know was like, oh, okay, that doesn't really work, does it?
I love it.
But it sometimes, I was just, because I'm so used to talking to people now in a certain way, in a business way, it doesn't sometimes work in a personal way. And that's something I've been learning with some of these like business growth events, or people, people have been really helping me like learn about business. I mean, the BIC and some of the people at the BIC in Sunderland have been really supportive.
BIC, sorry.
The Business Innovation Centre.
Right.
Have been really supportive of me, and the way that they've taught me things.
Yeah.
Has been fantastic. Some of their events of how to network, how to talk, how to sell yourself. And they keep telling me I'm over networking, in honesty, which I am. But it's because I want to grow, and I want to get some more work in there and learn from other people. I'm still so new to this. I've only been running my business for 3.5, maybe 4 months now.
Yeah.
And I'm just so new to the world. I need to jump in and make all those mistakes that I know I'm going to make, and figure out how not to do them again, and get there and mess it up, fix it, mess it up, fix it, and do it again.
That's it. So what's the future look like for you then?
Ooh. Ideally, I don't know if I want to grow an agency. I like being on my own.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, it would be great to have a full agency where I have a suite of photographers and designers and developers. I think I need to build a better relationship with developers, because I'm not a developer, and it's a skill set that I will never ever have.
It's different. I think it's the BA versus the BSc there, isn't it?
Exactly.
Designers, web designers, web
and
developers.
I went the wrong one. I think that's why I get along with BSc or developers, because I was taught by a lot of them.
Yeah.
But I need to build that relationship and have a suite of developers that I can work with until I can start hiring, and until I've grown my business enough that I've got enough to keep people afloat. Essentially, it's not just worrying about my own livelihood, it's worrying about other people's, to keep business for them and keep work for them. And I think that's a level of business that I'm not at yet, but I will get there eventually, and it'll be scary to have as well, to look after other people.
I mean, listening to you, I think you're right. I think you will get there. It's are you pleased that you've taken the jump?
At first, it was terrifying and I wasn't sure. But now, the more I'm starting to hear and meet people, and especially like in the Sunderland area where things are changing so quickly. I mean, all the new investment that's happening in Sunderland, I think there's potential for everybody. And getting a little bit political, I think with the budget that's just been announced as well, it's going to affect the creative world a little bit better because quite a lot of companies have in-house design teams and in-house people that they're not going to be able to afford anymore. And as is sad for them, they're going to outsource.
I think that's the thing with any change.
Yep.
There's an upside and a downside.
Yep.
And I mean that's one thing I've learned. It's like, sort of things might not always work out for the best.
Absolutely.
For me personally, and I suppose it's your job as an entrepreneur. I mean, you can sit around and complain about it. Or you can think, right, how can I turn this around to make it work for me? Yeah. And I think that's an interesting spin. Again, I mean, it's I can get on my political high horse, but I try and keep off it from this podcast. But yeah, there's it sounds like there's opportunities. Yeah. But I've no doubt whatsoever that, as I say, I mean, that you've been really honest in this interview, which I really appreciate.
I'm quite brutally honest.
It's but no, I mean, about your sort of areas of possible insecurity and things like that. But I don't think that comes across for you. I'm really, really confident that, like, sort of this time in a couple of years, I think you're going to be exactly where you want to be. And Dave, I wish you well in doing that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.